This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
It's always sometimes gonna pop in your head, that's for sure. But I think it's just creating that awareness. I think it comes in your mind, in your head. You have that thought, and you're like, "Oh wait, you have that winning streak. It will kind of be cool to like keep that going." And then you're like, "All right, this is cool to think about." And how do we do it? We do it with focusing on, all right, let's win the next shift, let's win the next period, let's win our battles, let's be hard in front of our net. Like all the practical things that you have to do in order to get the win, in order to extend that winning streak. And I think that's just the key.
There's Norris finalist there's Lightning defenseman J.J. Moser talking about a number of different things. Lightning back in action tonight against the Blues.
I want to give you some props, Greg, because you made a comment yesterday, and I heard it but didn't get a chance to acknowledge it or address it because we were getting, and I mean this in the best way possible,
Sure.
Steve was bombarding us with all these other
We were getting
defensemen as far as goals scored when they're on the ice against their team. So Moser doesn't have the fewest, but I think if you work through the reality of minutes played and tough assignments, Moser is having the best defensive season of any NHL defenseman.
Yeah.
But you made an interesting point. You said this is kind of the equivalent of an offensive guy scoring 50 goals or 100 points. We can't really say that about defensive defensemen.
Right.
Because it's harder to quantify that, but that's actually a great point. And maybe for a guy who isn't used to scoring 50 goals or 100 points.
Yeah, it's almost like what is the equivalent of that on the defensive side?
Yeah.
And I think that's where those metrics come in handy. You know, you can use some of those. And honestly, if I was his agent, not that he needs it anymore.
Well, fortunately, he already signed his extension, right?
But I mean, if you ever want to get into those discussions, you have some of these things you can back up what your client does on a high level. Did we get some news coming out of the gate here with Steve texting us?
Brandon
again?
Halverson recalled. Well, Johansson didn't skate yesterday.
All right.
And the fans are probably aware, I am not on this road trip. So, I mean, the Lightning haven't even taken the ice yet. So they're on the ice 11:30 Central, which is 12:30 Eastern. So my expectation is if Halverson was recalled, that it's going to be him and Vasilevsky based on the fact Johansson didn't skate yesterday at practice. Could be an illness. I mean, it is going around. He has not played since the Monday game in Philadelphia. He got the front end of the back-to-back. So who knows? It's not like the Lightning have had a lot of practice where he would have potentially gotten hurt. And if he'd been hurt in the Monday game, you figure they would have recalled Halverson for the Tuesday game in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
So we'll wait and see. Maybe all three goalies are going to be on the ice. So
wait and see.
Yeah.
The wait and see approach, which is all we can do. We do want to take some questions at Bolts Radio. We talked a little bit about the Blues yesterday.
Yeah. They're having a tough year.
We can get into them a little bit more if we want. So, the Blues, I don't know if this might not be the best example. I don't think they have a ton of star power. Jordan Kyrou always was a guy I think has that ability. I think he's a phenomenal talent. I just don't know overall if they have a ton of game breakers, particularly at the forward position. And I think when you take a look at the NHL and how things are constructed today, I think you need something like that, or at least more than one, if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you feel. I know, goaltending has been up and down over the last handful of years. I don't know if Binnington has kind of reemerged with some of the Four Nations and Olympic hype that's been going on with him. But I don't know. I feel like they're a team that had their moments, and unlike the Lightning, haven't been able to maintain a certain level of excellence over the years.
Well, the one stat that jumps out that jives with what you're saying is they're dead last in offense, 32nd. So they're just not scoring goals. And if you're missing some game breakers, that can affect you. Now, Kyrou has been hurt at points this year. In fact, he didn't even play in the first meeting between the teams.
Yeah.
He is back. But Robert Thomas is now out, and he's probably like Kyrou maybe is their most
Dynamic.
Yeah. Kyrou can do things that not too many other players on their team can do. Maybe Buchnevich, and that was a line actually for much of the time that the three players have been on St. Louis. Buchnevich, Kyrou, and Thomas. I think Thomas is their best all-around forward. They have some good defensemen. I mean, Justin Falk's got 11 goals. He's on pace to set a career high in goals. He's among the league leaders for goals by defensemen. He scored in the first meeting between the teams. And, Parayko is going to go to the Olympics. He's a solid defenseman, has been a solid defenseman throughout his NHL career. I believe that he's second in the NHL in block shots. So he's cut from that kind of cloth. And I can tell you, Greg, any one of the other 31 NHL teams would gladly take Colton Parayko on their team. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about a player like that, they have good players, but where's their pop? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what you're alluding to. Now, they have a prospect, Jimmy Snuggerud, who didn't play in the first game between the teams because he was hurt. I think that they have.
Do they call him Snuggy? Yeah. Did they call him Snuggy?
Snuggerud was a very good college player.
Yeah.
I don't know what they call him. Maybe they do call him Snuggy. Or just Jimmy. So he's a prospect.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a fairly high pick. I can't remember if he was first round or not, but they do have 2 first rounders that are playing on their team. Dalibor Dvorak, who's got a big shot, and he went 10th overall in 2023, and then Otto Stenberg, who also played in the first meeting between the teams. So who knows? I mean, maybe these guys will evolve into something more than what they are providing right now. But the problem for St. Louis is they are just not very good metrically this year. They're last in offense, and they're in the bottom half defensively. You mentioned Binnington. So where I come down on Binnington is not having a good year objectively, and he's having a less good year than the other goalie, Joel Hofer. Hofer has better numbers than Binnington. Hofer has 4 shutouts this year. In fact, he's coming off a shutout win in St. Louis's last game. And I will just point out, the Blues have been not at home exclusively, but they're playing better at home than they were earlier in the year, and they're for sure playing better at home than they are playing on the road. In fact, their last 2 home games, they have shutout wins in both. They weren't back-to-back. Their last game was at home. They shut out Carolina. Prior to that, I think they had played 3 straight on the road. The game before that, they had a shutout win at home, and they won 3 straight at home. We've talked about how the Lightning have struggled in St. Louis. Hopefully they can kind of reverse that trend, at least for tonight. Hofer is having a better year than Binnington. But why is Binnington on Team Canada? Why did Binnington play in the 4 Nations for Team Canada last year? I believe Binnington is a big game goaltender. So Binnington might be going through a season where his stats are not great. Maybe he is not playing to the level that he wants to play. Usually when you get Binnington into a high-stakes game, the level of his play goes up. I mean, it's easy to forget because the Avalanche ended up beating them in 2022. The Blues had the Avs down 2-1 in the second round, and Binnington was dealing. And then Kadri ran into Binnington in Game 4, and he missed the rest of the series, and the Avs won Games 4, 5, and 6. Now, I'm not saying there was any ill intent there. Blues fans might say there was ill intent. But, we remember how good the Avalanche were in 2022, and Binnington had them down. And I'm saying he had them down. He basically stole Game 2 in Denver, and it was a big part of their Game 3 win. Well, look at what he did for Team Canada last year at the 4 Nations. Look at what he did in 2019 when the Blues won the Stanley Cup. So I just think that he is a guy that you can count on him when the stakes are at their highest to play very well. Not too many people thought the Blues would take Winnipeg to a 7th game, and they took Winnipeg to a 7th game. They were up 2 goals in the closing minutes against Winnipeg. Winnipeg needed a miracle to come back and win that 7th game. Why? Well, the Blues were the second wild card team, but I have to believe that Binnington had a lot to do with it. So, I mean, the Lightning aren't going to see the Blues in the playoffs unless somehow they get to the Stanley Cup final, and I don't even know if Binnington's playing tonight. But you asked about him. That's my take on Binnington. But as it relates to the regular season, he's not having a good year. He didn't have a great game, honestly, against the Lightning. He gave up 4 goals. I think the Lightning had they didn't eclipse 20 shots in that game. That was the last game they had before the holiday break. They jumped out to a lead. They had the lead basically the whole game. I think Holmberg scored in the first shift. So they led the whole way. They didn't really need to press on the gas. I think they might have finished with 17 or 18 shots. So those are ugly numbers for Binnington because he gave up 4. That's going to feed into this narrative of he's having a bad year, but you get Binnington in the Olympics. Is he going to play? He may. Between him and Logan Thompson, who I would expect is probably coming in, maybe considered the front runner. I don't know. I mean, Thompson had a great start to the year. We'll see how that plays out. Are you willing to bet against Binnington that he is not going to be in Team Canada's net in the Olympics? I'm not willing to make that bet. He has a proven track record for them. And when that tournament starts, John Cooper and the rest of the Team Canada coaching staff and management aren't going to give 2 hoots about what he has done in the regular season this year. This guy is a money goaltender in big-time games. So we'll see.
I think it's fair to ask, playing devil's advocate for you and for anybody who's a big Binnington fan, and I'm not discounting what you said, some of that stuff in the postseason happened a few years ago. In fairness,
but the Winnipeg series was
Winnipeg was last year,
yeah.
which he was,
and they lost the series. So I mean, it's not like they won the series. But
and I think the question is, what's the point of having a big time goaltender in big time games if you never get to those big time games?
Right.
And this St. Louis Blues roster, the way it's currently constructed and where they are on the standings, I think it's going to be a hard play for them to get in. I don't know what his contract status is. I guess what I'm alluding to is, can you leverage that? If it's not for your team to help, in the rebuilding mode to have a number 1 goaltender, is there somebody out there? Look, if the Edmonton Oilers were interested in Tristan Jarry, you could have made a case that is there a market for Jordan Binnington for some of these teams who feel like they need to shore up their goaltending?
Right.
For everything you just mentioned, which is a big-time goaltender in big-time games. So, to me, that would be interesting. But I think I didn't realize they were last in scoring. It was simply looking at their roster and thinking, man, partner, they don't have very many dynamic players. I'm curious about how this game will play out because the Lightning do struggle, as you pointed out, on the road. But
in St. Louis.
St. Louis?
Yeah.
It is tough. It is tough to win in this league, particularly, I think, in the postseason if you don't have anybody who can put the puck in the net.
Yeah.
Because
By the way, Binnington has 1 year left after this one. He makes $6 million a year, modified no trade clause.
And I don't even know
so,
if he's been on the block. But
I wouldn't know either. But
I would look at that.
That's not an enormous commitment to acquire a player of his pedigree. I'll use that word.
Now, I think the other thing, too, with Binnington, and I've always said in sports, for the most part, a lot of organizations will look past perhaps your behavior on the ice or even off the ice. And as long as you can play, there's room for you. I think every team in the league has reached with certain players who maybe have a little bit of an iffy track record when it comes to their character or personality. We do know that Binnington has rubbed people the wrong way.
Well, putting it generously, we would say a player like Binnington has a fiery personality. Right? But we've seen excellent players, Hall of Fame players who fit that description.
What I mean. So
Ron Hextall, I don't think the Flyers are unhappy to have Ron Hextall on their team back in the 80s or in the 90s.
No,
he was
sure.
He was cut from the Binnington cloth, or maybe the other way around, right?
And I think it only lasts if you're productive.
Yeah.
I think once your production starts to wane a bit, then it's like, I don't want to put up with this pain in the you-know-what all the time if he's going to cause me headaches left and right. So the point being was, if a team were to look at Binnington, I do think you would need a locker room that has some pretty strong leadership too, to say, listen, you're being brought in to help get us potentially over the hump, and we got some leaders in this locker room who are going to keep you in check if you feel like that's an issue.
Yeah, and you look, internally, who knows how they're viewing this? Hofer is younger, although Hofer is also going to be on an expiring contract soon. I think he has 1 year left after this year. Yeah. He's 7 years younger than Binnington, and
Right.
he's restricted with arbitration rights after next year. So maybe they're going to like put their chips on his side of the table. Remember, Doug Armstrong is their GM, and he was the GM of Team Canada. Now, what we learned from our fireside chat with Julian, the way the management team kind of operates is if you have somebody in the management team who is the GM of a team, and that team has a player who is being considered, that person kind of steps back
Sure.
a little bit, which makes sense. I mean, you know Armstrong is going to advocate for his guy, right?
Yeah, right.
But I think to me, this was a no-brainer based on what Binnington did at the Four Nations last year. They won the tournament, Greg. He was the winning goaltender in
right.
that tournament.
Sure.
So it makes sense to have him. Now it's up, like when Julian said that's Coop's problem. Like who starts, that's up to the coaches. Who's going to play in this tournament? And look, Team Canada has great options. Anyway, if the Blues decide that Hofer is their guy, he's younger, he's less expensive, he's playing better this year based on his numbers, although both players have another year left. Maybe they look at making a move. They may not be willing yet to raise the right flag. Did I say the right flag? I meant the white flag would
Whatever
not be the
flag
right
you wanna
flag.
raise.
Yes, that's a tongue twister. So let me actually look and see exactly where they're in the standings. They are below the playoff cut line for sure. But let me just kind of get a sense of, is this hopeless or is this still like, do they have a path? So they are 7 points behind San Jose. San Jose is in the second wild card spot. San Jose just beat Washington in Washington. San Jose has had a sneaky season because they had some horrible losses, like they lost to the Lightning, right? They've been blown out of the water, no pun intended, in some games, but they've also had some quality wins. So the Blues are 7 points behind the Sharks, and in order to get into a wild card spot, they would have to leapfrog 5 teams right now. And they have 35 games left. So that to me is looking like not quite an inside straight, but you're going to definitely need to go on a run here. And I just don't know if they have it in them. And Thomas is going to be out a couple of weeks at least. I mean, pulling Robert Thomas off the St. Louis Blues lineup and out of their lineup and off the roster for a couple of weeks, I think affects the Blues more substantially than if you're taking another 1C off another team. Like the Lightning just lost Braden Point. The Lightning are going to miss Braden Point. But I'm not sure that his absence is quite as devastating to what the Lightning can do offensively and in all situations as what Thomas can do. He's good on faceoffs. He's a power play guy, kills penalties. He's great 5-on-5. He's a very, very solid player. Now, is he McKinnon? No. McDavid? No. I mean, he doesn't have that in his arsenal, but he's a very, very good player, and I think deserving of being a 1C on this team. But they're missing the pop, right? They've also had other injuries this year, I mean, for what that's worth, but, I mean, so many teams have, and they've not been able to navigate through it. So we'll see what happens tonight. They are playing better at home. They have pulled some shutout wins out of their back pocket in recent games. And I think if you're the Lightning, I really like what Moser said, which is basically he summed up in that soundbite at the beginning of the program, process over outcome. If you're getting caught up in like, well, we just won 11 in a row, we can just like go out, the wins are just going to come. No, like what is it going to take to get a 12th win? It's going to take focusing on shift by shift, doing what we need to do, playing hard, defending well. That's the process, right? And you hope that the chips fall favorably as they have for the Lightning in the last 11 games.
I love that process over outcome. That's been like a well-known phrase that a lot of
not
people
just
like
in
to go
hockey,
to.
not
No,
just
I know.
in hockey either.
Still got to have the outcome, though.
gotta
I
have
mean,
the
that's
outcome.
nice. I love the process.
Well-
and that's basically saying if you put in the work,
Yeah.
you're going to be rewarded.
And look, you know,
That's fair.
We look at that game on Tuesday, and like we look at things from the Lightning's perspective, Greg, and we're like, yeah, the Lightning were a little bit off in terms of their playmaking, but they hung in there against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh didn't get a lot of chances 5-on-5. Before overtime, I thought the Penguins were really at their most dangerous when they were on the power play. And they were without Erik Karlsson. Okay, fair enough. What happened last night?
Yeah.
Blew out the Flyers 6-3. The Lightning really sent the Flyers into a little bit of a tailspin here. They've dropped out of the top 3. They've lost 4 straight in regulation now. So they need to correct the ship. Like some of these other teams have had some wobbly moments. They've been able to correct it. Now the Flyers have to do it. But, I mean, I maintain, like the Penguins, their metrics are very impressive this year. So, like, that was not a nothing performance. Third game in 4 nights, second half of a back-to-back with travel. You're taking on a team that has scored this year. They have. And the Lightning really did a good job of limiting what Pittsburgh could do. You know, the Penguins maybe were in a little bit of an offensive rut because they only had 1 goal against Calgary and they were shut out against Boston leading into that game. So maybe they got going in the Philly game and they didn't quite have it going against the
that's
Lightning.
also a rivalry game too.
It's a rivalry game. Penguins also pass out of some scoring chances, which we talked about that with the Lightning in the game against the Lightning anyway.
Right.
But they did it. So, you know, those extra passes took away potential scoring chances. What matters at the end of the night is how many chances did the Lightning actually allow? They allowed some chances in overtime. They allowed some chances when they were on the penalty kill.
Yep.
Other than that, I thought they did a quite a good job against Pittsburgh.
I want to get to this question via email. Our good friend Jim
Yeah.
from Jacksonville said, Dave, just wanted to follow up on your Jack Adams discussion. Is it just one broadcaster per team like yourself that gets a vote, or does Dave Randorf vote also? Do teams analysts like Brian Engblom and Phil vote? Do national broadcasters not affiliated with a team like Sean McDonough of ESPN vote? Do you vote at the end of the regular season or before the playoffs start? Do you vote for 3 coaches, i.e. first, second, third place? All good questions, Jim.
Yeah, that's a lot to remember.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're a member of the Broadcasters Association, you get a vote. So yes, Dave Randorf gets a vote. Brian Engblom gets a vote. Phil gets a vote, although I'm not sure how often Phil actually fills out his ballot.
Is it via mail? Like, do they mail it to you? Can you do it electronically
email.
at this point?
Yeah, now
Email.
when I started, yes, it was in the mail.
Yeah.
Now they have some kind of like firm. By firm, I mean like a company that like verifies that
A third party sends it out.
A third party,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
exactly.
Right.
It's all legit.
Yeah.
There's no funny business there with the voting. So yeah, it's done on email. And if you're a member of the Broadcasters Association, you get a vote. So Sean McDonough should get a vote. I mean, I actually don't know where the cutoff is because so Eric Erlandson gets a vote as a writer, but like he does broadcasting, right? So there are some people that kind of sort of do both, but I don't think that they get votes for both.
What's
right?
the total? What's the total? Do you know the total number of broadcasters that are eligible?
Well, some
to vote?
people don't vote though. Like
That are eligible to
Elliot
vote.
Friedman, for example,
Right.
Elliot probably is voting as a writer, but like he is a broadcaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's on a panel, so I'm not entirely certain. And like the Lightning have, Andrechuk on the panel and Colbert on the panel. I'm not sure that they get votes. So I don't know everybody who gets a vote. But if you are doing play-by-play and you are doing game analysis, I am certain that you are getting a vote, Jim. That's the best how I can answer that first part of the question. The voting takes place at the end of the regular season before the first playoff game. If you submit your votes after the puck has been dropped in the first playoff game, your vote does not count. This is an important point that I've been making going back a while with the whole Cooper argument. Like, how is it that Coop hasn't won Coach of the Year? Well, it's a regular season award. If you wait until the playoffs start, your vote does not count. So you're basing your vote on what happened over the 82 games played by each team in the regular season and what that coach did. Okay. And then, yes, we get 3 votes. So we go 1, 2, and 3, and there's a point. There's a point
system
total.
kind of?
Yeah. Like first place gets 5, second place gets 3, third place gets 1. And then they add them all up. So you may have some non-votes, Jim, possibly, if some broadcasters don't send it in, but most people do. And so, yeah, like for a team that has 2 play-by-play announcers and 2 analysts, those are 4 voters, at least.
Yeah.
There may be others.
Interesting.
Anyway, that's my understanding of like overall. But
Yeah.
I can tell you that, we get the email probably 10 days to 2 weeks before the regular season ends, and you can send it in then if you want. I usually like to wait until the regular season is over and that window between the regular season ending and the playoffs beginning.
All good questions, and we appreciate that. But I think you eliminate all of the nonsense.
Yes.
Just give the award to the guy who wins the Stanley Cup. Let's see here. Alan says, Vasi just got win number 350. How does that rank as far as fastest to 350 in NHL history?
I have not seen anything about that in the notes, so we will defer to Steve if Steve can. Steve is very good at looking that stuff up. So
why do I want to say it's like in the top 5?
It may be. So
Maybe
a lot
even
of
more
this,
than that.
a lot of this, we need to actually put in a qualifier, and I'm going to say the same for Coop as it relates to the Scotty Bowman, because Coop got to 600 wins. It was close, but he was second to 600 wins behind Scotty Bowman. Thing to keep in mind for Vasilevsky, for Coop, for players who are, for anyone who is like picking up a win, right? Teams. Once you got rid of ties, you change the dynamic of number of wins, how many games to a win. Like Scotty Bowman, for much of his coaching career, at least the beginning part of his coaching career, if a game was tied after 60 minutes, he was not getting a win. That was it. It was a tie. Then we had overtime. Well, you could still have a tie, right? Now there are no ties. So there are extra wins available for players and coaches now, as opposed to generations ago. It doesn't take anything away, really, from the accomplishment. I'm just bringing that up as, they had the talk about Roger Maris, right? He had the how many extra games, to hit the extra home runs over Babe Ruth. That was, yes, he got extra games, but that was the season. This is much different.
Yeah.
This is changing almost the definition of what would happen in a game. Just think if Scotty Bowman had the shootout, how many more wins he would have had, right? That's my point.
Sure.
But Steve can look up the fastest goalie to 350.
Pretty incredible. Why do I want to say number 2 sticks out, but I could be wrong. G4RR says, good question on that previous one about Vasi. He always says wins is the individual stat that means the most to him.
Yeah, sure. Most goalies agree. Vasi won't say no to a shutout, though. I'm certain.
Mytho says we never win in the Blues arena. Only 5 wins. Hopeful to change that tonight.
Well, a lawyer would say that is a contradiction, because if you never win, you wouldn't even have 5 wins. But we understand what Mythos is saying. It does not happen often.
Dio Hippo. I've been a critic of Nick Paul. I think angry Nick Paul is a level up from regular Nick Paul. What can we do to get angry Nick Paul every shift?
I'm not sure I agree. I'm not sure that Nick Paul plays as angry Nick Paul. I think Paul is a fairly consistent player for the Lightning. I do. So he's getting more minutes now because he's been put into the spot vacated by Point due to the injury. I guess I just don't see it quite the same way, but the fan is entitled to his or her opinion. I didn't catch the name on that, so.
I don't know. The reality is, I think with Nick Paul, for me, is who is the real Nick Paul? Because we've seen him go on spurts, go on streaks. When he first came over, he looked like a guy who was going to score 25 goals. Almost like a Brandon
Did you think
Hagel.
he played angry? I didn't think that he
Not
played
angry.
angry then.
But I think for me, the bigger question is how can you find more consistency with Nick Paul? And I kind of agree with Phil. I think not only does he need to play probably more, I think he needs to play with consistent line mates. I think for whatever reason, Nick Paul was the one guy in that lineup they think is interchangeable. Mm-hmm. He can play on a 4th line. He can play on a 1st line. And I think sometimes that can be your own worst enemy too, your versatility. And I think every player would like cohesion. And so for Nick Paul, I think he's the one guy on that team, for me at least, that always seems like he's moving up and down in the lineup.
Yeah.
And because of that, he's playing with different people. It's a credit to him because I think he's always going to find a place to be in the lineup. But I also think it can be a detriment because he's not consistently in one spot like we've seen a lot of other guys. So is it angry, Nick Paul? No, but I think maybe we can agree on what's the best chance to get a consistent Nick Paul. And for me, I think it's playing with regular line mates on a specific line and not moving up and down as much. And I'd be curious to see what his production would look like. So we'll see. K-Bay, and if people were just joining us right now, Halverson was recalled. She says, do we know why Halvey was called up?
Johansson didn't skate yesterday.
Yeah. So people who are just hearing
that's how we would
this.
connect the dots. Well, I'll try and keep an eye on social media and see if there's any reporting going on from St. Louis. Because the Lightning should be taking the ice. Thank you, Steve. Nothing yet.
Nick says, the last couple years, the Lightning's biggest weakness was playing on the road. This year, they are dominant away. Any thoughts on why?
Very good question. I think 2 years ago when they struggled defensively, that jived with them struggling on the road. I would have to go back and look. I think they were better defensively at home than they were on the road, and that was the year where they struggled defensively. Last year, they were quite good defensively.
Yeah.
But they lost a lot of games on the road where they could have gotten points and didn't. I remember that last year where they were tied going into the third period and they would lose the third period. Maybe some of it is confidence, but again, as I said, I think on yesterday's show, I usually repeat myself when I say this, and I say it, I feel like at least once a week, so this is definitely more than once.
Yeah.
But if you defend well, you give yourself a chance to get points. The Lightning have defended well this year, and that includes defending well on the road. We just saw it in the Pittsburgh game. They defended well in that game when other parts of their game weren't quite as in sync as maybe in some other road games that they've played or other games they've played. Well, they defended well. They held the Penguins to 1 goal. They got the game to overtime, and they won on the shootout. You need some of that. That's going to help your road record. But maybe some of it is confidence too. Like it can feed upon itself, right?
Yeah. Usually when you're winning on the road, it's a cliche, but they're cliches because typically they're true. You're good defensively.
Excuse me, I cough on my coffee.
That's okay. I made such a great point.
Yes, you did.
No, it's
Please
usually,
repeat yourself.
I think this year we all could say, okay, defensively they've been really good this year. Why have they been better defensively this year? That's a separate question. I think some of it is because they've had to. You have some star players out of the lineup. Maybe you can do things a little differently.
Good point.
And, I think newer guys, too, in the lineup partner, they don't want to take as many risks, and they want to play it safer. Again, you'd probably have to go back metrically and look to see if that is the case. Are there less east-west passes? Are there less turnovers in their own zone? Are they chipping it out? Maybe that is all true with my observation potentially here. But typically, the way I would answer that is maybe it's not a surprise. They have a good road record because they are defending.
Yeah.
And usually that goes hand in hand.
And I'll add one other point. I mean, just off the top of your head, Greg.
Yeah.
How many, and I'll just say road games, how many road games have the Lightning had a goalie absolutely steal for them this year? Not many, if any at all. I mean, the goaltending has been good, but how many road games have the Lightning won a road game where we're coming out and be like, that was a flat-out steal. That was like larceny. And I think the point is that
good point.
They're playing pretty well. Like they haven't needed a steal.
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying that the goalies haven't had to take a shower afterward. The goalies are contributing, but we've seen games where, it's Vasilevsky making 45 saves on 46 shots and the Lightning are, finishing with 22 and they win the game, 2-1 or something like that. We haven't seen games like that really. No, we haven't.
It's a really good observation. And I would say, again, this is more of the eye test. So I'm wondering if the numbers are jiving with my eye test. I feel like the shots per game they're allowing has been lower than I can remember in the last few years. Because how many times have we looked at each period and say, man, that team only got 5 shots on net?
Yeah.
Or for the game, it's in the teens or low 20s. And you're thinking, man, I mean, you don't see that a lot in today's NHL. And, you really don't see that a ton with Tampa Bay Lightning teams sometimes. But I think it speaks to the overall cohesiveness defensively And that's why it's a credit to John Cooper and his staff. Again, more props to John Cooper. Most people think the Tampa Bay Lightning are a team that just can score and they rely on goaltending. But if you've watched this team this year, that's true, but it's also very true. Defensively has probably been the most impressive aspect of this team.
Yeah.
And has allowed them to stay
One of
afloat.
them, anyway. I mean, they are second in offense, too. So,
It's pretty incredible when you think
by the
about
way,
it.
I just want to mention Kucherov's streak ended in the Pittsburgh game. What a streak, though.
Yep.
So, I don't have all of these numbers off the top of my head, but it was something like, that was like his 12th point streak of 10 or more games in his career, which is just insane to think about. He was one off the record for a player not from North America for consecutive multi-point games in a streak. Jágr did it back in the mid-90s at 10. So Kucherov's point streak was 10, but his multi-point streak was 9, which tied the franchise record for the Lightning. So hopefully he just gets right back on the horse. But what a run from Kucherov.
It's been incredible.
Yeah,
Logan
and it coincided with the win streak,
It did.
as we talked about.
It did. Dave, can you explain when two players get penalties at the same time, why sometimes they cancel out and sometimes it's 4-on-4?
So you have 4-on-4. There are a couple of ways you can get 4-on-4. So if it's 5-on-5 and there are 2 penalties called at the same time, 1 on each team, and it's a minor penalty on both. They can be the same penalty. They can be, as they say, coincidental minors. It could be roughing and roughing. It could be roughing and cross-checking. You have 2 minutes of 4-on-4. Okay? The other way you can have 4-on-4 is one team is on a power play, and the team in the power play takes a penalty.
Right.
Then you have 4-on-4, but they're overlapping. So eventually the team started off shorthanded will get the same amount of time on the power play. When do you not have 4-on-4? So if 2 players get more than a minor, both players get 4 minutes for roughing, it stays 5-on-5. Or if you have like 2 penalties on 2 different players, so you have 4 penalties total, then you're not going to go to 4-on-4. Right. It's not like the first 2 minors are 4-on-4 and then the second 2 minors aren't. So those are the main situations that I can think of right now. There are probably some others, but generally speaking, if it's 5-on-5 and it's 1 penalty, 1 minor on each player at the same time, you have 2 minutes of 4-on-4. That's actually how you can't get 3-on-3 though, unless you have all of these overlapping situations.
Right.
So let's say you have a 4-on-4. We're playing on different teams, Greg. We each got a penalty. Our teams are playing 4-on-4. During the 4-on-4, one team takes a penalty, leading to a 4-on-3. But before that ends, the other team takes a penalty.
Right.
Then you could have 3-on-3, and eventually the players start coming out of the boxes. You and I would come out first, so that 3-on-3 would become a 4-on-4, and then each team will get, I guess one team would get a power play. But yeah, you can have a 3-on-3 that way. That's very rare.
You cannot have a
Usually the only
2-on-2.
You can't have a 2-on-2. And really, the only time we honestly see 3-on-3 is in overtime, which is manufactured. Like it's supposed to be 3-on-3. The other thing I'll mention is, and again, we don't see this a lot, but we see it probably more than 3-on-3 during regulation time. If there's a power play in overtime, it is not 3-on-2. It's 4-on-3. So what happens when the penalty is over, if the team that's on the power play doesn't score and the player comes out of the box, it does not, like they don't blow the whistle and be like, let's go back to 3-on-3. Like you play 4-on-4 until the next whistle. And then it goes to 3-on-3. If there's time left.
It's a good point.
Yeah. Sometimes there's no whistle. Like we didn't have a whistle in that Pittsburgh overtime game. There were no power plays there, but.
And that one's hard because I wonder if you have a really good player in the penalty box and they can't come out until there's a stoppage in play.
Like Sorelli.
do you try to, like, as that team, try and manufacture a stoppage in play? Like, can you
3-on-3 is tough though. Like,
but like, get it back
you don't
to
want
your
to shoot it
goaltender.
out of play.
No,
right?
but like if you're behind your net and nobody's around, could you get it to your goaltender to kind
But
of
the goalie
cover it
won't
up?
get a whistle unless there's an attacking player in the vicinity, or else he'll get a delay of game.
Correct. So it would take a lot, but you wonder in those moments, because you're right, Cirelli was out for how many minutes? I mean, that was a big deal. You want a guy like that out there, so that is always interesting. G4 says, I'm over the issues with face-offs. It's laughable at this point. Makes literally no sense. When healthy, we lost Glendening, and we have all but crumbled on the dot.
So meaning that, like, when there are no other injuries, the players that were doing better last year are doing worse this year. And that was one thing Julian talked about at the Fireside Chat, which is like, I believe our players' percentages are below
the norm,
their career averages.
Right.
But, and I did ask him about this, and he conceded this is a fair point. How many extra faceoffs are those really their lefties being asked to take because Glendening is not there? And we ran through Cirelli's stats, like how much better he is on power play faceoffs, where he can pick the circle and maybe put the other guy on his weak side, and he gets to put his stick down second, as opposed to taking penalty kill faceoffs, where the Lightning can't pick the circle, and often the other team is putting Cirelli on his weak side, and Cirelli has to put his stick down first. It's the same player, the exact same player. And he's at like whatever it was I was looking at a couple of weeks ago, he's like over 60% on power play faceoffs. And basically the mirror, like, opposite on penalty kill faceoffs.
Sure.
Why is that? Well, situation matters. If the fans want, I can explain again the difference between a strong side faceoff and a weak side faceoff. But essentially, when you're on your strong side, you are more likely to win the faceoff. If you're on your weak side, especially taking on somebody who is on his strong side, you are more likely to lose the faceoff. Jeff Halpern once was talking about Bergeron, who to me is probably, in our generation, there may not have been a better faceoff guy with everything else factored in. Because it wasn't just that he was really good on faceoffs, he was taking all of the key faceoffs. Sure. So he took them in the O zone, he took them in the D zone. So basically, the way Halpern described Bergeron, remember, the very best win 6 out of 10. So it's not quite like, Carl Yastrzemski, who was like in baseball, if you fail 7 out of 10 times at the plate, you're going in the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
I think Yastrzemski said that.
Yeah.
Anyway, he probably wasn't the only one. It's a little bit better for the best faceoff guys. But the way Halpern explained it to me, he's like, you put Bergeron on a strong side, he's almost unbeatable. Put him on his weak side, he's still good, but you level the playing field a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
And it has to do with the leverage you can get on your stick.
Yeah.
Because when you're on your strong side, the linesman is not in the way of the shaft of your stick.
Sure.
Because the shaft of your stick, the way most players take faceoffs, the shaft of the stick comes forward. The blade of the stick goes back. You're pulling it back on your backhand. That's the preferred way to win faceoffs. If you're on your weak side, you pull that blade back and the shaft goes forward, the linesman is in the way. You cannot get the same leverage. And winning faceoffs is finesse and technique, but it's also strength. So, and timing, right? Bergeron was also really good at quote unquote cheating, right? Like he was able to push the envelope just a little bit,
and that's not a
not
surprise.
get thrown out. Yeah.
All the great
ones earned the
do.
respect. Yeah. But I mean, mostly it was skill.
Sure.
But there is something to what side are you being asked to take the face off and who's your opponent. If both guys are on their weak side, then it becomes a little bit more of a push.
Yeah.
And as we've talked about, Crosby is a guy who will win them on his forehand. Not everyone can do that.
No.
Giroux turns his stick around, so he's always on his strong side, but as we said, it's like trying to throw, if you're right-handed, trying to throw a baseball left-handed, right? You're not going to be it's just not as natural for you. So
I've maintained this, and I'll still believe this. I do think the improvement that's going to happen in the face-off circle most likely is going to have to come from the guys within, because I think whoever you acquire because of how the lines have been and how deep this team is, I don't know who you're bumping from that lineup unless you're taking somebody out of it and trading for a face-off guy who can also play in your top 12.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where they are, and you have to hope guys make improvements and just get better.
And really the only way around it, because the fan was asking, like, they can't understand it. Well, I'm trying to explain what has happened, and there may not be an easy solution. Julian may have a point, though, that, the individual players may elevate. They may be able to elevate.
Yeah, they may.
Okay, but a lefty to the right of the goalie is sailing into a headwind.
Sure.
That player is sailing into a headwind. Now, they could lean more on Finley if Finley is in the lineup. That has really happened this year. When Finley has been in, his face-off percentage has just been, He's a rookie to the NHL. That's understandable. The other option is use Braden Point more. Braden Point does not take many face-offs on his weak side. So his percentage is probably a little bit more of an eye-opener where, like, in his career he's been higher.
Yep.
And if you absolutely need a face-off and Point gets hot when he comes back from his injury, let's say he starts, rattling off 55% on a regular basis. I don't know if that's in the cards. Maybe the Lightning look to him. Like, we got a key face-off to the right of the goalie coming up. We're going to send Sorelli out too. We're going to send 2 face-off guys out. One's a lefty, one's a righty. We need this face-off. Late in the game, penalty kill. I mean, Braden Point hasn't really killed penalties, but this is, you have things that you can do short of let's acquire a face-off guy. Because you're okay if Braden Point is out on the ice, right? In the defensive zone. It's just that they haven't really asked him to be in a penalty kill situation or in the 5-on-6.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a good point. I want to get to Jason here, who says, you've previously spoke on Mac and Hedman's mentorship of young D-men. Have you heard of any differences in Heddy's leadership style as a captain this year compared to last? Had to be off ice this year.
So we heard that from Julian at the fireside chat. He was complimenting McDonough and Hedman for the influence that they had on the younger defensemen. And I think it's on ice and off ice. But I will say this about Victor, just kind of knowing him, he is a vocal guy. So when he was, the alternate captain to Stamkos, he was vocal. I'm not sure that he's like appreciably, I'm not sure that he was appreciably less vocal before he became captain. Maybe he deferred to Stamkos because Stamkos was the captain, but I don't think that he went from like 0 to 60. Like, he's always been a pretty vocal guy.
It's one of those things where you're not around the team. At least I'm not enough to know what gets said in the locker
we're not
room
in the
and things
room.
like that.
Yeah.
So you just have to sometimes, the time on the practice ice, pointing things out, having people over for dinner, that bonding. Those are things we don't see that I know does go on. That's part of being a good leader.
Yeah.
I think is taking that extra time for some of the young guys, and the fact that they've said that and that has helped them, and you can see their play on the ice. That does speak to the culture, I think, collectively that the Lightning have created. And Victor Hedman probably learned a little bit from Steven Stamkos, and maybe Stammer learned a little bit from the guys he played with. And
Marty St. Louis and Vinny. Yeah,
down,
absolutely.
I think that's all fair. This comes from Mythos. Says a guy like Trocheck or Sherwood on this team would be insane. I wonder if we can make a move for him before the deadline.
Well, those are 2 teams. I think those are the 2 last place teams in either conference.
Yeah.
Actually, I had the standings up so I can look. Vancouver is for sure in last in the West. Kiefer Sherwood plays for Vancouver, and the Rangers are in last in the East. I don't know about the Trocheck situation. I mean, again, I'd have to look at their contract situation for the 2 players, and I actually will, as I have Puckpedia up. So let me look at Trocheck first. I would be very surprised if the Rangers move Vincent Trocheck. And Trocheck has a lot of term left. So after this year, Trocheck has 3 more years.
How old is Trocheck at this point?
Trocheck is 32.
32.
But I am a big Vincent Trocheck fan.
You like him a lot. I do too.
I
He's
do
good.
like him a
He's good
lot.
player.
I think he checks a lot of boxes, including an ability to win faceoffs, as we were talking about it. But he can play power play. He can play penalty kill. He's a playmaker. He's got a great experience. He's had deep playoff runs. He's got a lot of playoff experience. Sherwood is a little bit newer to the party. He is more, and I'm saying this not having really watched him as much as Trocheck, just because he's played in the West, first Nashville, and now Vancouver. So it's not like I'm seeing him a lot, but I feel like he's a little bit more of goal scorer, right? First of all, he's a right winger, so I don't even think he takes faceoffs. But I'll look up his contract situation. So Sherwood, he's on an expiring contract and he makes $1.5 million. So that to me would signal he is a guy that could be moved.
Yes.
Unless the Canucks are like, we really like you and we want you to stay as a part of our future, and he likes it there and decides to resign. Because look, from the outside, and I have no knowledge of this situation, but from the outside, you're like, Vancouver stinks. Sherwood's going to make a lot of money. He's a UFA. And
yeah.
I mean, he's not young either. What's his age? Sherwood's 30. So, I mean, this next contract is going to be the contract for him. On the other hand, Vancouver is the place where he really blossomed into the sort of player that a fan in Tampa is saying the Lightning should acquire him, right? I mean, I'll look up his career stats, but I don't think he did anything like this when he was in Nashville. So maybe he feels a connection to Vancouver, which is his right, Sorry, I'm trying to talk and type at the same time. But
no, you're good.
Yeah, why a player decides to stay or leave, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's not always dollars and term. I mean, that's part of it, and maybe that's most of it, but comfort level, opportunity. So his last year I remember him in Nashville. I didn't realize he was undrafted. He started in Anaheim. I don't remember that at all. Then he had a couple of years in Colorado, which I didn't remember at all. One of them was the year that the Lightning didn't see the Avalanche. Then I remember him in Nashville. So he was in Nashville for a couple of years. His second year, he scored 10 goals in almost a full season. But since then, his 2 years in Vancouver, last year, 19 goals in 78 games. And this year, he's got 17 goals in 44 games. So, I mean, he has just shattered his goal production from, pre-Vancouver to with Vancouver. It's night and day. So if you're Kiefer Sherwood, you're like, Vancouver is the place that gave me the opportunity. Maybe that moves the needle for him. Now, if he's traded, who knows? But on an expiring contract making $1.5 million, yeah, he could get moved for a team that is in last place in the West and even farther out than St. Louis, which we were saying St. Louis kind of needs to really have some giddy up here. Mm-hmm. The die may be cast here for Vancouver, and they're going to start to make other moves. By other, I mean they already traded Quinn Hughes, right? So
tonight, enjoy some Reef Rum, smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule, and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts, and enjoy responsibly. Game tonight is at 8 o'clock, by the way.
Yes.
7:30 we'll be on the airwaves, breaking it all down. Let's get to...
By the way, Coop did mention, because it doesn't sound like McDonough is going to be playing this weekend, unfortunately, because it seemed like there was a chance he'd be coming back for the Olympics, and he may still. But it sounds like Lundmark is, and they did have a recall prior to the games in Philly, Simon Lundmark. So Lundmark has been the seventh defenseman, and maybe he even predated the road trip. I can't quite remember when he came up, but he's been the extra. So they basically have the minimum plus Lundmark and now Halverson. So I think you're probably going to see the same lineup that we saw in the Pittsburgh game, where Finley's your fourth line center.
Rob says, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mish, would you do the Olympic radio call if the opportunity was there for you? Personally, I'd love it if you were the one doing it. That is kind of cool.
Yeah, I've never been asked to do even a national game on radio. Maybe they feel I bleed Lightning colors too much. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm not one of those people that is.
That's not on the bucket list.
I don't know. I mean, first of all, doing the Olympics, that is a heavy, heavy lift. This Olympics might be a little different because you have all the NHL players, but even with the NHL players, there are going to be countries where like half the roster is filled with players that I've never seen before.
This is a silly question, but are like the most recent Olympics for hockey, were they on like Sirius XM?
Yeah, so that's another
maybe,
question.
Right?
So NHL radio is the national radio broadcast, and like Steve Versnick was telling us, NHL radio is going to be doing the Stadium Series. Now, where you get NHL radio, I mean, I think you can get it on Sirius. You can probably find it online. I don't know how many terrestrial radio stations they are connected with now. That's probably a Steve question, but it exists. Like, and usually they're pulling broadcasters from teams. John Ollers, by the way, my predecessor with the Lightning, who's been with Anaheim as long as I've been with the Lightning. He vacated the job, went to Anaheim to do TV, and I took the radio job with the Lightning. John does a lot of radio for NHL radio. So they use announcers. We've seen him in the playoffs coming to do games, right? Yeah, right. I think Steve just said they
do use terrestrial radios.
They do. Okay, so they have some affiliates. Yeah. I mean, back before everything was digital, that's the way. That's the way it operated. But no, this is not. I'm not really jonesing to do the international tournaments. I remember a few years ago, my good friend John Walton, who is the Caps announcer, radio announcer, had an opportunity to do. I guess it would have been the last Winter Olympics, and I think he went and did women's hockey at the Olympics. And I mean, he's calling like South Korea. I mean, I may be getting some of the countries wrong, but like, good luck, learning those names. I know Brian Engblom has gone and done the World Championships. Not last year, but a couple of years prior, and it was in Europe. He went over and he worked some games with Dennis Bayak, who I don't think is doing them anymore. I think Dennis officially retired. He was a longtime NHL broadcaster and spent a lot of time in Winnipeg. Like when Winnipeg got to Winnipeg, Dennis became their TV announcer. And Brian would be like, I'm glad I'm not doing play-by-play on this because, I mean, the World Championships, when Sweden is in the World Championships, you're not seeing probably Victor Hedman, unless Victor is out of the playoffs, right? But like last year, he had an injury, right? Yeah. You're not seeing many NHL players. You're seeing a lot of other guys.
Although I would think if you are, not all of the broadcasters are, but there might be more information readily available where you at least have some information on these guys, more so than 20 years ago.
Well,
right?
That's true, but you still have to memorize the names.
You do, but maybe they had a cup of coffee in the NHL. Or maybe you have referenced them. I know Brian has mentioned to me when he's gone over to Europe and called, I forget what specific games they are. Maybe at the junior level, he remembers some of these guys coming up. And so things like that.
Dave Randorf, when he was in Canada, did a lot of World Junior tournaments.
So that I'm not saying it's easier, it just might be a little more accessible.
Yeah.
To have an idea of
it's a lot of I'm answering the question this way. It is a lot of work. Now, if, whoever came to me and was like,
USA.
We want to send you to Italy and your wife can come.
My
wife would be like, you're doing the games. I'm gonna go have some pasta
for 2 weeks. I'm coming with you, by the way.
We're busy during the season. That's another family considerations, right? We're busy during the season, and do you really want to be leaving the 3-week break that you get? It's like dropped in the middle of the schedule, or you can do some stuff.
I would just say,
no. You're going to be leaving for 3 weeks.
No, I would say in that instance, I would be like, the fam is coming.
Yeah,
we'll figure that out. But if you're taking me 3 weeks away from my family, I know that's a great opportunity. But just, I know in our situation with where the kids are, that's just a hard ask.
I have never I have never attended an Olympics. And, there have been a few in the U.S. during my lifetime. I was pretty young for Lake Placid. But, I was in my 20s for Atlanta. I didn't, I wasn't there. I didn't go. Salt Lake City happened in 2002. So that might be an interesting thing to go to and see the different sports. I know some of the athletes have really enjoyed saying, like, I really enjoyed going to see other competitions, right?
LA is 2028, Mish, so we may get an opportunity.
Yes.
I'll go and be your spotter.
Yeah, that would be something.
You don't need one. I'll just go there and I'll just,
If you had a chance to go to winter or summer, what would be the one sport you would want to attend in person? And it probably would have to be one, because there are probably some sports that we don't even know exist. The ones that are on TV are the ones we know about.
Secretly, I'm a big tennis guy.
Yeah.
I love tennis. One of my bucket lists. Now, this is when, look, I
have been to a U.S. Open.
That would be on my. I told my wife I think that would be really cool going to New York, because not too long ago, watching those night matches on the U.S. Open, at the U.S. Open, and some of this was when I was really watching sports, and my time wasn't consumed with little ones at night as it is now. But you remember Andy Roddick, James Blake.
Yeah,
there was Marty
Agassi
Fish,
would play
Agassi, Sampras. So the Americans had some really good players, but you had Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. But you had guys that when you were watching it, it was exciting. So I don't follow tennis as much as I used to, not nearly as much for sure. But I think that is one of the things where it's more about the event.
Yeah.
And I do like tennis, so I think I could appreciate how hard those guys hit the ball, and women for that matter, which they do. And to kind of take that all in. So to answer your question, I would probably try and take in some tennis, because I like playing tennis too when I had time.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I think some sports maybe equate better on television than in person. Like
Probably.
the swimming in the summer is a big TV sport, but that I don't know. That would be a little. Like, what's next? Like, who's the best swimmer here? Like, they really give you a lot of analysis on television. Then some of it might get lost.
The sprinting,
in person.
The track and field, the relay
you're
racing,
in one spot, right?
Well, and people just love to see how fast somebody is, right? I mean, like Usain Bolt when he was flying. I think people were mesmerized by how long his stride was and how much faster he was than
as opposed to
else.
Skiing, which is interesting, but you're in one spot, right? And maybe
that's hard to
follow it.
Yeah, and that's one of those where look, everybody at one point or another, everybody competed in a race at school, so you could appreciate how somebody was fast.
Right.
I appreciate the athleticism it is to be a skier for sure. I just don't get excited. Same with golf, by the way. Not a golfer. Don't like golf. I understand how hard that is. I always make the comment, if they were playing in my backyard, I would not only close the door, I'd have the blinds over and make my way until it was done. But I appreciate the athleticism that is involved. But in terms of wanting to go and watching a sport, I think tennis off the top of my head. Yeah. And I'm sure I could be convinced of some other ones as well.
You and I can go to LA in 2028 with the families and go and watch tennis.
We would love that.
I didn't even mention LA had an Olympics in 1984.
Yeah, they did.
14, almost 15 at the time.
I was 4.
I remember that.
Yeah.
You were 4.
I was 4.
You are an Olympic kid though, because 1980.
That's right.
You're every
Do you
4
believe in
years.
miracles?
It's kind of like weird now. When I was much younger, and 1984 was an example. Like the Summer and Winter Olympics were in the same year, and then in the early 90s they started rotating. It's like, maybe we should do this so we have the Olympics every 2 years, as opposed to 2 every 4 years. Like, aha. So
good point.
Yeah, so it's been that way ever since. But in 84, you had the winter and the summer. Sarajevo, I think, was winter, and then LA was the summer.
I think you're right.
Yeah. I remember watching a lot of those events that summer. I was home on vacation.
Yeah, why not?
So,
It definitely draws a crowd. Not
fans can tell us what would be their.
We're getting some reaction. We have Rob who says, yes, Mission Greg for next Olympic cycle. That would be a lot of fun. But who knows?
Who knows?
All right.
We know we're going to be on the air tonight, Lightning and Blues, and then we'll have another game on Sunday, Lightning and Stars in the afternoon. Then you and I back here on Monday to recap.
So most people are off on Monday.
Games.
We'll have a.
Do we have a show? Do we have
I'm
a show?
assuming we're on a show, but most people might be home listening.
Yes, it is a holiday. Happy Martin Luther
My wife
King
and I
Day
were,
to everyone.
talking about that. And we're like, oh, the kids are home.
Yes.
That's one of
we
those
have a
things.
show. Thank you,
Yes.
Steve.
So if you want to listen to us while you're doing your errands around the house, put us on.
Yep.
And we'll be there for you. Partner, I'll talk to you tonight.
Talk to you tonight.
Appreciate it. Thanks to Steve Versnick, and thanks to all of you for listening. We appreciate it as always. Game tonight is at 8 o'clock. Pre-game will be at 7:30. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.